Hello, me Momo, Brandon Geringer, and I have a confession to make. I'm a Grognard, and I have no really any problem saying that to anybody. So, what is a Grognard? Grognard is someone that likes older versions of role-playing games, or maybe other stuff too. I don't know. But as I've gotten older, I've become more of a Grognard, and I'll try to give my side of the story of why that is, and also talk about my views on newer, more modern role-playing games. So, I've been asked this before from one of my videos because I always do a lot of OSR and old school type videos. So it's been on my mind ever since the person left a comment, and I figured, yeah, I'll make a video and try to explain myself a little bit. So I am not completely against new role-playing games. Let's get one thing out of the way. I'm cheap. And from some other videos, you might have noticed that, but I'm a little bit cheap. But yes, I do have some expensive stuff back here on this bookshelf back here. But of course, it's games that I really enjoy. So obviously, I pay a little bit more to get those cool versions and books and whatnot. So a little bit of history. I started role-playing games almost around when I was about 10 or so, and I first started off with Twilight 2000, and then I moved on to D&D 2nd Edition. And that's pretty much where I got my start. I played a little bit of Car Wars, but really 2nd Edition D&D is what kind of started me down the trail. And even before that, even before all that, the fighting fantasy novels, the books, the adventure books from Steve Jackson and Ian Livingstone, that's really what propelled me into some sort of game, dice, and stuff like that. So that was really the first thing, and these other games came along. And so I cut my teeth on 2nd Edition D&D like a lot of guys my age probably did. And I don't have a whole bunch of a connection to the older editions, even though I have some of them, mainly just as a collection type thing, but I do enjoy them, and of course they are amazing. But one of my things about, as time's gone on, I've collected a lot of role-playing games, and I don't have, you know, role-playing games like some of these people do that have just shelf and shelf and shelf of all sorts of different books and games, and it's just as ridiculous. And I'm sitting there, I say to myself as I get older, like, how are you ever going to play all those games? And so it's more of just a collecting type thing, and I was in that mode. I mean, I had a lot of books, and within the last year, I've sold about $1,000 worth of role-playing books, and I've just really diluted down my collection, and it's almost kind of like a fine wine now of stuff that I really enjoy. And to be honest with you, there was a time where sure, I would get any new role-playing game or check them out or whatever, and that was all well and good, but it's always kind of one of those things as you get older, you realize that, you know, the gleam and the shine of something new still, you know, it doesn't surpass possibly the stuff that you still have that maybe you haven't played, that's still on your shelf, or you haven't given the time or effort to, and that still has value. And so as I've gotten kids and I've gotten older, and I'm no longer kind of in that kid just carefree, I'll buy whatever I want type mindset when I was younger. Then as I got an adult, I got money and I was able to do it even more. And so now I just look at them and almost, you know, it was almost like a bit of just embarrassed at all the books that I had. I was just like, wow, this is embarrassing a little bit. Like, I can't believe I spent all this money on this. I haven't given the attention that they deserve, and really, that's on me. That's my problem. That's my laziness. It has to do with a lot of different things, but one of them obviously is going to be me. So it's my fault, and so I got rid of a lot of them. You know, it helped me get more. I said, you know, what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus on the games that I really like and try to get as much as I can of those. I've tried to rebuild my AD&D 2nd Edition collection. I've done a really good job of it, and I'll probably be doing videos on that in the future. But that's what I started with, and there just came a moment where I realized, hey, look, this game did it for me back then, and while not everything is the same today, we have a lot more distractions, our lives are different, entertainment is different, the way that we consume entertainment is completely different. That's a whole video in its own right there. You could really go down that road big time in a video, which, who knows, maybe I probably will. But I will like to say that I'm not against new games. I still see some of the old games as being better, maybe mechanically, or what they try to do, or how much fluff or crunch or whatever it is that they did back in the day, because they didn't have a lot of this. It was just in a different mindset. You had to give a lot of product. 2nd Edition D&D is a prime example of that. If you go back and look at some of the supplements they did for Forgotten Realms, it's amazing the amount of information they cram pack into that small book that probably sold for 15 to 20 bucks. And the amount of work for how much it was, of course, you know, the cost back then compared to now, is just amazing. I see it now and I'm just like, wow, this guy, this girl, they put a ton of effort into this product back then in the early 90s, mid 90s, whenever it was, way back in the day, and it really shows. I don't feel like I get that as much nowadays. I feel like I'm being led down a road of more and more purchases. And of course, the old editions are not, you know, they're not innocent of that either. You know, they're completely guilty of that in a different way. It just has to do now more with how much money I have, what I can spend it on, what my time can be. So a lot of these splat books and stuff for new editions of games, they're just too much. I mean, look at the new edition of Shadowrun. Look at any Fantasy Flight role-playing game, which I'll be talking about one of those here in a second. But I do have some newer role-playing games. Now, the first one that I enjoy is, of course, because I like the video game role-playing game, is the Dragon Age. This is, you know, the Dragon Age role-playing game. And I got the big fancy one, too. That's how much I enjoy this role-playing game. And I would consider it to be a newer role-playing game. It's not one of the more story-driven games that everybody's doing now with the players put their input into the game. That's not really my style, and it's probably never going to be. But I really enjoy that game. I think it's a good game. I do consider it more of a modern game, and it's an easy game. But of course, a lot of what I like from it is from the setting of Dragon Age, and that's very helpful. So I, of course, like D6 Star Wars, West End game Star Wars. And when some friends decided to play the Fantasy Flight new one, I was kind of like hesitant at first. But it was one of those moments where I said, you know what? I want to play with these people. I want to be involved in it. So I went out and I got the book. And of course, for me, it's all about the rebellion, because that's where D6 Star Wars lots of times was set. And so I went out and picked this up, and I got all those dice and stuff like that, which, of course, isn't, you know, dice are one thing. I wish we didn't have to have those dice, but I see how well they're useful with what the system is for a game like Star Wars here from Fantasy Flight and all their proprietary dice that they use. I wish there was just one universal one that you could buy for all their games, but I understand they try to make them a little bit different for each game and different symbols and stuff like that. But really, to be honest with you, that it's still a fine game. It does what it does very well. Do I think it's better than D6 Star Wars? No. Do I think D6 Star Wars is better than it? On some things. Are both of these games better than what they do at certain degrees better? Yes. My heart is with D6 Star Wars, and the simplicity of it and the memories I have of it, but I enjoy this Fantasy Flight version as well. It's different. It's new. I'm not a huge fan on talent trees and stuff like that, or like unlocking abilities as you go. A lot of times players just completely zone in on that, and that is their character, which is a problem I feel with a lot of modern games. Obviously, you know, D&D 3.0 and Pathfinder and a lot of these other games have really just gone that direction, where you just look at your character and see this big branching limbs of how your character is going to become, and that becomes their character. And there was a time where that was very intoxicating to me. Like, I was like, wow, this is awesome. Look, I can do this and that, and I'll unlock this. And so a lot of people say, well, you know, oh, so then you don't like that way now. I say, no, it's not that I don't like it. It's the fact that I can split my brain kind of in two halves there. And it's sometimes I have no problem doing very crunchy type stuff like that with talent trees and stuff. Or I can go back to the old school where you don't have a bunch of skills. You don't have a bunch of those talents and stuff. And it's mainly, if you want to do something cool, you had to create it yourself. You had to act it out. And it was much more memorable to me than just, oh, I rolled a bunch of dice because these feats or abilities allow me to do that, and I kick the creature's ass. That's not as fulfilling to me than to create stuff. So obviously I still harken back to those games that help you kind of more create what your character's all about. And really that's the point of it. I would love to be able to try some of these new games. Like I said, it's a matter of, do I want to collect old books that go to the system that maybe help me start this path down playing role-playing games? Do I want to get more of those, or do I want to get some new book that I might not play and just put on a shelf? And I don't know. It's kind of like a struggling thing, and I've decided that I just like to build up my old catalog of books. I should have bought them years ago. You know, I think about all the money I've wasted on other stuff, and I was like, wow, I could have an amazing collection of this game right now. So while I do like more swords and sorcery, I do like more of the old school art. Obviously, I find a lot of art, especially like with 5th edition D&D. It's very good art. The artists are amazing. It's just what they're showing us is just, it's not as low fantasy as I would like. It seems to be a little bit more high fantasy. The armors are more amazing looking, more intricate. A lot of the races I don't care for that I've introduced, and that's the Grognard that comes into me. I don't like some of the new races that everybody seems to be wanting to play that are not kind of the standard ones, and I'm just kind of old school like that. I don't, when I see like a tiefling or something like that, I'm just like, they don't deserve to be that. I don't like, like, get out of here. Like, what are you, And so that's just the hard-headedness of me, and so I have played 5th edition a couple of times. While I'm playing it, I am enjoying it. It is not a preferred game for me when it comes to D&D, and that is mainly because of I find that you have to look at your character sheet a lot. A lot of stuff triggers that your character sheet now, oh, you've got to do that when this happens. And of course, I might be completely wrong, and I need to play it more, and there's tons of suggestions about what I need to do. But I do understand that it's very popular. It's conflicting to see an edition that I don't really enjoy a whole bunch as much as I like other ones, but I can still have fun with it, doing so well. But then again, this is just the time it is of D&D being very, very popular, mainstream. It's gone all over the everywhere, YouTube and TV shows and movie, whatever. It's out there. It's big, and more power to them. It's just not my edition. So there's just this kind of disconnect I have from it. When I opened up that book for first, none of the art really was impressive to me. It was impressively done, but it just didn't give me the sense of what I like and what I see in fantasy role-playing. And a lot of that, of course, is going to come from, the book that started it all out for me, is this book right here. It was just, I've looked at the picture so many times, and it was, it was very helpful and creative for me. It was a catalyst for who I am today, along with a lot of other stuff. So it's like I've already been there and done that with a lot of stuff. When I look at 5th edition, I only tend to see negatives, and it's not because it's bad, and I think you should think it's bad. It's just they're bad, in my opinion, because I don't prefer that to something else, and that's really ultimately what it is. None of what I'm saying is bad, and I'm certain a lot of these new games are fantastic, but, unless someone gave it to me or said, here, we're going to play, take a look at this book, I'll play anything. I mean, basically. You've got the book and you're excited about playing it, I'll play it with you. If it's a new game, great. Now, will I go crazy and start buying all the books and stuff for it? No way. I mean, I don't care for 5th edition's hardback books everywhere. Don't care for these guys with their hardback books everywhere. You got $100, you mean a 100-page book that's $35 or something to me. I mean, to me, that just as an old school cheap guy, it's just ridiculous. And you have this whole, there's no other options. There's only these hardback books, and I enjoy hardback books, but they kind of are leading you down that path where they want you to keep buying, and it's just like with 5th edition. Everybody says, "Oh, this book's got all the great classes that everybody's playing in it now." I'm like, well, what about the handbook? Yeah, those are cool too. See, that just it gets me. 4th edition did that, where they were like, "Oh, these have got some great classes." I'm like, yeah, but what about the first one? Nah, nobody's playing those no more. Get out of here. That irritates me. And so that's that Grognard coming out. I mean, you can look up here on the shelf. I got a bunch of Conan. I've got Fritz Lieber. I've got John Carter of Mars and stuff. So it's just kind of what I'm about. It's more old school. The simplicity of it. I don't care for a lot of players all saying, "Hey, I've got +6 in that. Well, I've got +5. I'll roll that too." It just seems like a big skill rolling thing where everybody's like, "Well, I've got that. I have," and they're not so much individual. And I think the older games made the classes more individuals, and they had their moments to shine. I used to actually scoff at the non-weapon proficiencies. I know it's an option in 2nd edition, but they have non-proficiencies like pottery. I mean, and I used to be like, pottery, why would I take that? But now, I look back and see it, and I'm like, wow, that gives your character something unique. It's different. It doesn't have to be just a better way to kill stuff, a better way to sneak around. Like, it can be something that actually gives your character some depth to them. So while that's an optional system, I look at it now and I'm like, I make a character with pottery. I'm gonna go to town on pots. He sees the pots, he knows how to make it. He makes it when they're in town and he sells it. It's goofy, but yeah, that's what I like. Thaco's not a problem for me. You have to finally just tackle Thaco. So yeah, it's one of those things where I don't hate new games. I hate new games where they try to shove some sort of modern new agenda into them, and I wish that you could get sometimes more bang for your buck. I like PDFs; they're going up in price, of course, and I understand that. But yeah, it comes down to you seem to get a lot more for what you bought back in the old days. First edition Warhammer book is incredible. I've got it right over here. There it is. Boop, right there on the shelf. And that book has everything. And a big turning point for me was when second edition came out, and I saw that book kind of split apart into all these hardbacks, thin books. And I was just like, even back then, I was like, oh, geez, this sucks. I got so much out of this. So really, it just comes down to complete packages. And, you know, look at the DCC book, complete package. I love the White Wolf, the anniversary editions. They're huge and got everything in them. Savage Worlds, you get that book. That's a newer game, I would say, and I'm a huge Savage Worlds fan. You get that, and you've got so much adventure you can go on in such a small package. So that's really where I am. I do not hate modern games. I don't hate almost any game. I am not a big rules changer where I need to change the rules for my liking. I would give a game any attempt, and if it's not for me, it's just not for me. But there's no real hatred there, obviously. But yeah, I'm just kind of an old dude, and when it comes to my games and what I like, and I think a lot of people should kind of go back and look at the game that got them into this hobby in the first place and maybe try to re-embrace that. But who knows? I mean, it's fun to have something new and be excited about. And this is a younger generation that's playing it, of course, and this is more to them. And I'll probably do a video about that, you know, in the future, where the fact of the matter is, these things are just not built. They're not made from movies, TV shows, role-playing books, everything. They're just not made for certain people anymore. They're made for other generations. And it's tough to kind of let go and say, well, this is not for me anymore. And I feel like that with a lot of role-playing books and role-playing games, where I'm like, this is just not, it's not targeting me. And it's a kind of a growth thing to get by, to be like, well, yep, that's right. It's just something I'm going to have to deal with. So I embrace the past. I am open to whatever comes out in the future, what's out there now. But it's tough to, hard to teach an old dog new tricks. So that's ultimately what it is. I still do like some new games, but these are not extremely new. And I haven't tried a lot of these new ones that pop up on Drive Through RPG all the time. And a lot of the old books and old games still did it exactly the same. A lot of these games are still the same thing. You get a character, they've got weapons, they've got spells, they go into some creature's cave, they beat its ass, and they take its stuff. And then you might have more intrigue and more character development and stuff like that. But ultimately, those old games still can reproduce all that other stuff. And I have a lot of it, and a lot of it is what was inspiring to me. So that's really ultimately what it is. And the fact of the matter is, when I see a new game, this starts just kind of creeping into my mind. I'm like, ooh, that's where it was at back in the day. And of course, we're all trying to, chase our youth. So that's a lot what it is. So there it is. There's my little viewpoint on new games. I hope you liked the video, and look forward to making another one for you. Thanks.